All right. Well, happy Thursday. I'm excited that y'all are here this evening. A strong crowd, good vibes. It's good. So I wanted to talk a little bit about a koan tonight. It's case 38. It's from The Gateless Barrier, which is by Mumon. And it goes like this. It's called A Buffalo Passes Through a Window. It's a little weird. It says, Goso said, to give an example, it is like a buffalo passing through a window. Its heads, horns, and four legs have all passed through. Why is it that the tail cannot? Right? So a lot of times with the koans, the first thing you got to do is you got to kind of visualize what are they even talking about, because these are symbolic explanations, right? So you have so imagine a buffalo, right? Big animal, big head, tiny tail. So you have this large window, apparently it's buffalo sized, right? Because the buffalo passes through. And so the head and the body and all of it passes through, but then the tail, which is the smallest part, still can't get through. So why is it like that, right? Why is it like a buffalo where the biggest parts seem to be able to get through, but the tiny one can't? So it's an interesting analogy. Right? So another analogy we use in Zen is called sifting the dust, right? Start with sifting the boulders. So if we think of things in our life, right, whether we use buffaloes or boulders, right, the big stuff is easy to see. Right? So if you're stealing from all your friends and buying drugs every day, it's really easy to see that that's probably not a great idea, right? If you're yelling at your kids and hitting them, that's like a giant buffalo. That's a huge problem. Everyone's going to know that needs to pass through the window, right? We need to bring awareness to that. We need to change that. But there's always something we don't see, right? The problems we see are the problems we see. The problems we don't see are the problems we don't see, right? There's always a tiny tail that isn't yet passed through. There's always that trailing part that we still want to work on, that we need to work on, that we haven't seen yet. And so when we say it is like that, what are we saying? We're saying reality is like that. Right? So I often say that no one comes to practice because everything went well. Right? What drove the Buddha to practice and what drives us to practice often is our suffering. Something's not going great. And so there's two ways to suffer, at least two, right? There's what I like to think of as sort of stagnant suffering, right? Like imagine water that doesn't move, right? It turns green and grows bacteria. It's stagnant. There's stagnant suffering, right? And then there's enlightened, awake, enlivened, vibrant, liberated suffering. Right? So what's the difference between stagnant suffering and liberated suffering? What am I talking about? Stagnant suffering is when we recognize a pattern in our life and we don't do anything about it. And then we go numb, right? We're not ready to work on it. We're not ready to work through it. We're not ready to deal with it. Or we avoid it because it's too uncomfortable, right? And we step back from it. And then usually to do that, we have to then go do something to distract ourselves. And fortunately or unfortunately for us, we live in a time and a place where that's very easy, right? There's 1,000 things. We can watch TV, we can turn on Netflix, we can use a substance, we can call a friend, we can play a video game, we can, watch a reality television show. There's a zillion ways that we can engage in stagnant suffering, right? Where we feel suffering and it doesn't move us toward liberation. Or we can have liberated suffering. Liberated suffering is where we suffer by experiencing the discomfort of doing the thing that moves us beyond what we're struggling with. Right? In counseling, we talk about you got to feel it to heal it. Right? So So, if you're in a relationship and there's something not working in the relationship and you don't want to talk about it and you're avoiding it, right? That's stuck. But when we go toward it, that's uncomfortable, right? That's liberated suffering. It's like, I'm suffering. I don't want to have this conversation. I'm embarrassed. I'm awkward. It's difficult. And yet, inevitably, right, that discomfort of going toward the thing we need to heal is what brings the light in. We have to go toward the thing that's hard. So there's a koan I like that I was looking at recently that says, there's this famous Zen layperson named Layman Pong, and he says, these are wonderful snowflakes. They don't fall anywhere else, right? Meaning that, so that you got to imagine there's snow coming down, right? And it falls exactly where it falls. So that's our life, right? Like snowflakes is everything that happens to us. And it doesn't happen anywhere else. It doesn't fall anywhere else. It happens exactly as it happens. And everything that comes up when our life happens also is the snow falling. So, like, people in my life and my reaction to them all come up together, right? All happens at the same time. And frequently, it's been my experience anyway for myself, that, when something is challenging, my first instinct is to create separation. I want to move away from it. But very often it's worth, especially in your meditation, what are the things that you're moving away from that if you move toward, you could heal? Right? Is there liberated suffering that you could experience, right? Could you experience, and it's almost a better way to say it is liberated discomfort, right? Is there discomfort I could experience, the experiencing of which would heal the thing that is causing the problem? Does that make sense? Can you guys think of examples in your life where you're keeping something at arm's length because it's uncomfortable, that if you moved toward it, you could heal it? Maybe you're even trying to psych yourself up to move toward it. I'll move toward it tomorrow. And it's okay, right? It's okay. This is not a path of, we don't use a football coaching strategy in this path. It's not, get out there and move toward your issues. Right? All right, here we go, break, right? It's not Zen. Because all the things that hold us back are in there too, right? That's part of what is, right? The hesitation to go to the next level, the fears that all that's based on our karma. Right? All the things that we're averse to, we're not averse to because we're weak or stupid or unconscious. We're averse to things because we have negative experiences in our past that make up our present self. Because I know Zen, say we don't have a self, and that's true. You don't have a fixed self, but you do have a self. You have a thing that you've constantly, when I do this, you don't feel it, right? Like there is a separate being out here, and that separate being has experiences. And those, that we call that karma, right? And so your karma predisposes you to move towards certain things and move away from others. Can you think of any examples of something you're predisposed to move away from?
Cold pool before you jump in, and then actually enjoy the pool after you get used to it.
That's a whole Dharma talk right there. We could use that analogy, right? Cold pool. It's like that. So when Mumon's talking about this little tail that doesn't go through, even if you look and you see that little tail and you're like, oh, well, I need to address that habit, right? And then it moves through. Now there's another little tail. Right? There's always, the point of this koan is that there's always something that we are looking at or that we haven't yet fully seen. That's the practice. Right? That's why we come back to the cushion. We call it taking refuge in the Dharma. Right? We're taking refuge. In other words, we're going to a place where those things that we have not yet resolved can be resolved. And if someone comes and says, "Oh, well, I've got it all resolved. I mean, I've got a spiritual practice for you. It's going to resolve everything." Oh, warning, right? Unless they say it'll resolve everything one at a time, but it never ends. That I might buy. There's a poem that goes with this. It says, "If it passes through, it falls into a ditch. If it turns back, it's destroyed. This tiny tail, how extremely marvelous." I love that last line. This tiny tail, how extremely marvelous. So I just spent 10 minutes telling you that, one way of looking at the tail is the tail's the stuff you haven't dealt with yet, right? So how can it be marvelous? Like, what? I always find it cool that these things are hundreds of years old, right? And that they absolutely apply, like right now. Like, I literally have conversations about this stuff with people who, never even heard of Zen, and they're dealing with the same stuff. But how marvelous, right? Where's the gold? Where's the treasure? It's always in the moving toward the thing that you don't want to move toward. All of the energy, all of the power, all of the healing, all of the wisdom, it's all contained in that tiny tail. It's almost like, I don't know about you guys. Like, one of the things I love to do, if I want to avoid something that I don't want to do, I'll do something that's productive that I don't like doing, but that I can do instead of the thing that I'm avoiding to feel like I accomplished something. Does that?
A lot of laundry gets done
Right. For me, it's dishes, right? But it's like, look what I did. I did this great thing. But meanwhile, the thing that you really needed to look at, you're still avoiding. I don't know. There may be a word for that. I don't know what it is. And judged by the giggles that others have found that strategy as well. It's a good one. How marvelous, right? At least you can be deluded with a clean kitchen and clean clothes. No, there's delusion and enlightenment. There's enlightenment in delusion. Right? There's no finish line. So when we go toward our deluded thoughts, that's where enlightenment lives, right? That's where it can't steal the gold from the troll if we don't go deal with the troll. It's funny, I was thinking about, for some reason it came to mind, so my Zen teacher, my Zen teacher received Dharma transmission long before I did, but we're the same age. And I actually knew him when we were both younger, and we had an apartment together in London. And he had just started getting into Zen, and I was not at all into Zen. And he started doing all of this, like bowing and chanting and meditating and stuff in our shared bedroom, which is this tiny little room. And so I didn't really dig it, I was kind of, go to the pub and come back and pass out and be hungover the next morning, and he'd be sitting there chanting. And there's nothing quite so unpleasant as Buddhist chanting if you're hungover. It's just not pleasant to hear. But yet, so there's my tiny tail, right? It's like I'm sitting there, and at some point it literally was like, well, what are you doing? Well, over the summer I got into Zen. Oh, tell me about that. Right? He told me a little bit about meditating. I started meditating with him, and You start right there, right? Like nobody starts anywhere else, We start right there with all our baggage. Because enlightenment is original to us, right? Like we're not just the buffalo, we're also the window, right? We already have it. And so it doesn't take anything for the spark to be ignited, because you already have it. The spark's already, the fire's already burning. Just turn toward it, right? You'll feel the warmth, right? It's the same thing, right? Whatever it is that needs addressing in your life, go toward it. We need great faith that if we go toward the thing that's hard, this is why Muman says how wonderful, right? If we go toward the thing that's hard, it's transformed. I've never had the experience. I've always had the experience of not wanting to go, and every time I've gone, it's gotten better. Right? I mean, I can remember when you receive Dharma transmission, there's a week of ceremonies. And I mean, it's like, you get up at 5 and it goes until 9 at night, and it's 6 days of bowing and chanting and sitting, and it's a zillion things. And it's all done in secret. No one, secret's the wrong word, but, it's private. There's no audience. And I can even remember wanting to get on the plane to go do that and being like, oh God, I don't want to do this. Right? It's a whole week. I don't want to do this for a whole week. Oh my God. I got stuff I got to do. Right? That's aversion. We all have it. So what do? Right? You go toward it anyway. Like, well, I'm all in. Right? We're all alive, so we're all in. Like, you're here. You're alive. You have no other option. You didn't choose it. You didn't choose the rules. You didn't choose to play the game, and yet here you are. And so that being the case, you're already all in. So you might as well go toward the things that are hard and see what happens. Because the other option is that you don't go toward the things that are hard. When we do that, what happens? Nothing, right? Nothing happens. That's what happens. And if I go home and I play video games until 3 o'clock in the morning, nothing will happen, right? My life will not improve. That's a weird spot to end on. But that's okay. Yeah. Go toward it. If I could give you one thing, like if you never come back to train again, go toward the discomfort. Okay, that's enough.